Let me focus your attention this morning on Isaiah chapter 9. I called an audible yesterday at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was so moved by the performance of Handel's Messiah on Friday night that I changed what it was I was going to preach on yesterday at 1 in the afternoon. Okay, that's a little scary for a preacher to do, and it's certainly scary for you who have to sit here and now listen to a sermon that started to be prepared at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was going to preach on Esther and show just the remarkable parallels between Esther and Jesus. And I may still do that at some point in the future. But if you have ever heard Handel's Messiah, whether live performance or just the music, the CD, whatever, do they even have CDs anymore? The 8-track, the cassette, the record, whatever. Then you'll know that this passage that I'm going to be preaching from this morning in some sense is the focal point of the whole performance. Isaiah chapter 9, beginning in verse 1. This is part 13 of a series that I have entitled Hero of the Faith. And as you know, if you've been here, we have been tracing the Jesus-centered plot line through very familiar Old Testament stories and through very familiar Old Testament figures, and showing that the entire Old Testament whispers the name of Jesus. And the promise that God would one day send a rescuer to clean up the mess we made was made by God in Genesis chapter 3. And as you make your way through the Old Testament, that promise builds. The promise itself actually doesn't build, but our understanding of the promise builds as stories are revealed and characters live their life that we read about. And so this morning, I want to read Isaiah chapter 9, beginning in verse 1, reading down through verse 7. Familiar verses, especially at this time of year. This may be the most explicit place in the Old Testament where we are told about Jesus. Very descriptive of who this rescuer is and who this rescuer was and what he would come to do. Isaiah chapter 9, beginning in verse 1. But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time, he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. And may God show us Jesus loudly and clearly through these familiar verses. Let's pray together. Father, send your Spirit to teach us, to open our eyes, to unstop our ears, to enlarge our hearts, to inform our minds. We know that the opinions of a man, of a woman, of human beings cannot change the heart. Only you can do that. And so I pray that by your Spirit, you would be the one to come and preach this morning. That it would be your voice that we hear resounding in and through our hearts and minds. That you would overpower our unbelief. That you would help us to see Jesus high and lifted up, and as a result, leave here today knowing something more profound about the freedom that Jesus came to secure for enslaved sinners like me. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen. Someone, I think, has rightly said that the entire Old Testament is a book of Advent. We are in the middle of Advent season. Advent is that season in the year where the church, the 4 Sundays prior to Christmas, intensifies its celebration of Christ's first coming, which fuels our anticipation for Christ's second coming. And someone rightly said once that the entire Old Testament is a book of Advent because the entire Old Testament anticipates the coming of a rescuer who would one day save his people forever. And we see that so clearly here in these verses. As you read the entire Old Testament, you come away with a sense that something better is on the way. That there is a great promise that is yet to be fulfilled. There is a marked expectation for the arrival of God's Redeemer, of the rescuer, who would one day come and save his people. He was promised in the Garden of Eden. He was promised through Noah, through Abraham, through Moses, through David. He was promised and prophesied about through the great prophets of Israel. Everything in the Old Testament, the law, the tabernacle, the temple, the sacrificial system, as you make your way through the Old Testament, specifically Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, and you read all about the details of the temple and the tabernacle and its measurements and the sacrificial system, and you wonder to yourself, what in the world does this have to do with my life here and now? This doesn't help me with my children. This doesn't help me with my spouse. This doesn't help me at work. What in the world does this have to do with real life, the life that I live here and now? Well, all of those things point us to Jesus. They all pointed forward to Jesus. The prophets, the priests, the kings, the genealogies, those boring genealogies that we read in the Old Testament. All of those things are intended to point us to Jesus. The whole Old Testament, in other words, is pregnant with Jesus. You can feel him kicking throughout the Old Testament. Through the stories, through the characters, through the prophets and what they say, the promises, the prophecies. And this passage really is all about Christmas, but not Christmas in the ways that we typically think about Christmas. It reveals, in a very ironic way, it reveals Christmas as a conflict. Let me explain what I mean. Christmas is the beachhead of God's campaign against sin and sadness, against darkness and death. Christmas is the coming of light and life and love, but it's the coming of light, life, and love into the occupied territory of darkness and death and hatred. Christmas is the war fought by a peaceful prince whose battle plan is to defeat death by dying, fear by forgiveness, and slavery by salvation. That's what Christmas is all about. We think about Christmas as a celebration of light and love and hope, and it is. But we don't get the full sense of its significance until we understand that it is the celebration of light and life and love and hope, because it comes to us in our darkness, in hatred. It comes to us in our sin. That's what makes Christmas such a remarkable celebration. Well, St. Augustine called the book of Isaiah's prophecy the fifth gospel. He called it the fifth gospel. He was, of course, thinking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But in Augustine's opinion, there is no place in the Old Testament that speaks so explicitly and so clearly about Jesus as the book of Isaiah. The gospel means good news, as you know, and Isaiah was speaking here good news into a dark world. He announces the coming of hope in a time of hopelessness. If you go back and look at chapter 8, what you discover is that the Assyrians, Israel's enemy, were on the verge of taking over the promised land, and doom and gloom are on the horizon. They are outside the gate, so to speak. And these people were powerful, and they hated Israel, and God actually sent them as a means of judgment because of Israel's disobedience and because of Israel's idolatry and all of that stuff. And so the people of Israel are looking out on the horizon, seeing this powerful Assyrian army, and doom and gloom is on the horizon. They're looking out and everything seems hopeless. Their days are numbered. And they recognize that they're in very, very big trouble. And so Isaiah explains that the coming Assyrian invasion spells darkness and gloom for the Israelites. But then he notices in verse 1 of chapter 9, beginning with the word "but," speaking good news into the face of this doom and gloom, he announces a remarkable but. But hope is on the way. God promised that he would never leave you nor forsake you. He is a good father, which means he will discipline you, but he will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will always love you. He will always be there for you. Well, when we think about the doom and the gloom that the Israelites were facing as a result of this coming Assyrian invasion, we find ourselves in a similar situation. For them, everything seemed to be falling apart. The end was near. And for us, as we live our lives, as we engage the difficult circumstances that we face on a daily basis, as we have to live not only with broken people, but we have to live with ourselves who are broken people, everything around us seems to be falling apart. I mean, I was just disgusted and saddened on Friday when I heard about another school shooting in Colorado. Another one. I mean, more failing marriages, acute financial fears, debilitating relational tensions. I mean, just this year, 3 pastors, you know, guys who are supposed to be very religious and have it all together, just this year, 3 pastors that I'm aware of committed suicide. I mean, we hear about bad things happening all around us. We experience the bad things happening inside of us. Things in our lives and in this world seem to be spinning out of control. Like the Israelites looking on the horizon and seeing the Assyrians coming, we look on the horizon and go, is there any hope? Is there any hope at all? Is there hope for me? Is there hope for my marriage? Is there hope for my children? Is there hope for this financial disaster that I find myself in? Will I ever find another job? I mean, is there any hope at all? I mean, we look out, we just read the newspaper. Does anyone read newspapers anymore? Okay, you read it online. You know, you watch the news. I mean, nothing really seems to be going well in our world. I was telling Kim the other day, I said, let's just imagine that my life is made up of 6 spinning plates, okay? I said, you know, normally there are, you know, sort of 3 spinning at one time and 3 maybe not spinning. And just when you have to start spinning, the other 3 that aren't spinning, the ones that are spinning stop. So you're never actually spinning 6 plates at the same time. I said, the way I have felt recently is that not only do I not have 6 plates, I have 10, and they're all spinning at the same time. All of them. And the more people that I talk to, the more I find that's true for them too. That's true for you too. I mean, nothing in life seems easy. Everything seems to be difficult. Just when your relationships start going well, your health starts to fade. Just when your health starts to get better, relational tension begins to brew. Just when your marriage seems to be getting better, your children start acting out. Just when your children seem to be getting better, your wife starts acting out. Okay? Or your husband. Just when things in life seem to be getting a little bit easier, perhaps, you lose your job, or you hear of the death of a loved one, or something. Nothing is always going well all the time. Life is hard. We are, as I've said, broken people living in a broken world with other broken people, and that means life is hard. And you're not acting super spiritual and demonstrating some heroic strength by pretending that life is not hard. It is hard. And if you're honest, then you will acknowledge that there are times when you are falling asleep, when you're going to bed at night, or when you are driving in your car or whatever, and you find yourself wondering, is anything going to get better? Will my son finally turn around? Will my daughter come home? Will I ever get married? Will I ever, like I said, find another job? Will financial tension begin to ease? Will life get any better? We live in fear that our kids are going to go off the deep end, that we might be single the rest of our lives, that people might find out who we really are. All of us have secrets. Even if you've been married for 150 years, there are things about you that your spouse does not know, and there are things about you that you hope your spouse never finds out. All of us have secrets. All of us have things about us that we don't want other people to see. And lots of us live in a perpetual state of fear that someone might find us out. Someone might call our bluff. We live in fear that things aren't going to turn out the way that we hope they turn out, the way that we need for them to turn out. So this dark reality was not just back then for them. This is yesterday and today and tomorrow for all of us. And Christmas, of all times in the year, brings this out. Christmas is both joy and gloom. It's both excitement and stress. We love the decorations. We love the presents. We love the family. We love the friends. But Christmas is also that time when budgets break. When you're reminded of how dysfunctional your family is. Everybody has a family member they don't want to see at Christmas time. I have like 14 of them, okay? Just kidding. Mom, I'm not talking about you if you're watching live stream. All of us have people in our lives, family members, friends, relationships that have broken down. And Christmas just exacerbates that, We think back at previous Christmases when things seemed to be going well, when the marriage was intact and now divorce has happened. We think back at previous Christmases when our children were small and just so happy to be a part of our family, and now they don't even want to talk to us on Christmas Day. Some don't even call. Some parents I know haven't been able to talk to their children for 3 or 4 years because their kids won't call. They want nothing to do with their mom and dad because of a mistake that mom or dad made when they were young. And they're just racked with guilt and they're racked with shame. Well, Christmas brings that out. Christmas is not only joy, but it's also a reminder of those people in our lives that we have loved who have died. Everybody, I am guessing, has lost someone this year. Someone that you know has died this year. This is going to be the first Christmas for many of you without your spouse, without a friend, without your parents, your mom or your dad. Maybe this is the year that you were diagnosed with cancer or some other terminal illness. And your fear is that this might be your last Christmas with your family, with your friends, or you know someone in your family, or you know a friend who was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and your fear is that this will be your last Christmas with them. I mean, Christmas brings this out. It highlights our fears. It exposes us. And it reminds us that things in this life and things in our world are not the way that they're supposed to be. I mean, the Christmas season has a way of revealing why Christmas is so necessary. It reveals our deepest frustrations and fears, our most sincere sadness and suspicions. It reveals our brokenness. It reveals our bitterness. It reveals all of these things, and ironically, it's this Christmas season that has the power to reveal why Christmas, why the essence of Christmas is so necessary. See, Isaiah is describing our reality. Life under the sun, as the writer to Ecclesiastes termed it. It is tears and pain and confusion and fear and death. And it seems terminal. I mean, there is nothing in creation, in ourselves. There is no nation. There is no government. There is no president. There is no leader that can fix the deep problems in our lives and in this world. None. We have tried for thousands of years to fix the problem of the human heart, to make things right. There is no nation, there is no government, which is why Isaiah talks about God's government. There is nothing in creation. There is no nation, there is no government, there is no leader, there is nothing outside of us, there is nothing inside of us in this world, life under the sun, that can solve our biggest problems. Nothing. I mean, you might be able to, in some way, shape, or form, fix your financial troubles this year, but you cannot mend your own broken heart. It's impossible. You might be able to, in some way, shape, or form, find the job that you need, find the relief that you need outside of you. God might bless you with circumstances that will ease the tension, but you can't fix that relationship. You can't force that person to talk to you. You can't summon love from that person who refuses to love you. You can't generate your own meaning. You can't generate your own value. You can't justify yourself. You can't validate your own existence. I mean, the deepest problems in life, the deepest issues in life are things you can do nothing about. They are outside of your control. If there is a solution, it must come from above the sun, from the land beyond the Jordan, as Isaiah talks about here in verse 1. And this is precisely what Isaiah sees. He sees the light at the end of the tunnel. He begins, after explaining the doom and the gloom that's on the horizon in chapter 8, he begins in chapter 1 by saying, "But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish." I mean, one of the great signals in the Bible that we're getting ready to hear good news is when we see the word "but." We see it, as you remember, we looked at last year as we made our way through the book of Ephesians last spring in a series that I entitled "But God." You see it in chapter 2 of Ephesians, where Paul talks about just how depraved we are. He talks about our problems, talks about our death, and he says, "But God." Well, here we have an Old Testament version of "but God." Beginning in chapter 9, verse 1, having explained all of the things they are getting ready to face, he says, "But there is hope on the horizon." He begins to see a figure appearing who will one day restore his people. He sees a rescuer, a savior. He looks beyond the darkness and sees the dawn of a new day. In the face of this doom and gloom, Isaiah says, "But to us a child is born. A son is given." And at this announcement, the mood of this entire book changes. If you make your way through the book of Isaiah, it's here where the mood changes. The mood always changes when we hear good news. Always. You know that to be true in your own life. Regardless of what it is you're going through, when you hear good news, the mood changes. Things get lighter. And here, by announcing that there would come a redeemer, a rescuer, a child who would be born, a son who is given, the mood changes. And notice that the son is given. Okay, he's not earned. The son is not earned. The son is not even being asked for. And we see this again in John chapter 1. That Jesus came to his own, and his own did not receive him. Jesus didn't come because we were crying out for him and saying, "Oh my gosh, we're in big trouble. Please come." Jesus came and we rejected him. It's the hound of heaven coming after us. Not because we asked him to come, but because we need him to come and don't even recognize our need. This son, this child is given. He's not earned. And notice specifically, he's given to us. He's given to us, those who are hopeless and burdened and broken and scared and weak, to the weary and heavy laden. That's who he's given to. He's given, not earned. And he's given to us. He's come for us. He's come for the imperfect people. He's come for the sick people. He's come for the burdened and the broken. He's come for the scared. He's come for the weak. He's come for the losers. He has not come for the winners or those who think that they're winners. He has not come for the strong or those who think they're strong. He's come for the weak. He has not come for the righteous or those who think they're righteous. He's come for the unrighteous. He has not come for those who are good. He's come for those who are bad. That's who he's come for. I mean, Israel was getting ready to be punished because of their disobedience. God comes to them in their disobedience. That's the remarkable counterintuitive miracle of the gospel. God comes to us not because we're good, but because we're bad. I mean, that's an amazing thing. We say we believe that at the beginning of the Christian life, and then we think once we get past that, now God comes to us because we're good. No, God continues to come to us because we're bad. Continues. God's not waiting for us to get good before he draws near to us. He draws near to us because we're bad. And that's the perpetual state of the Christian life. Christmas sets in motion the divine pattern of God drawing near to us, not because we do it right, but because we do it wrong. So at Christmas, a divine pattern that will carry us through the entire Christian life is set in motion. We don't move beyond Christmas. We never move beyond Christmas. We never move beyond the pattern that God establishes at Christmas, the announcement that he makes at Christmas, that I draw near to the bad. I come because you're doing it wrong, not because you're doing it right. And Christmas sets this in motion, this divine pattern of God drawing near to us, not because we do it right, but because we do it wrong. Not because we grow out of our need for him, but because we continue in our need for him. In fact, as you mature and grow as a Christian, you don't grow beyond your need for him. You grow deeper in your realization of your need for him. That's what Christian growth is. That's what spiritual maturity is. It's not growth away from grace, as Peter says. It's growth into grace. It's this perpetual pattern of I must decrease, he must increase. Taking my eyes off of me and fixing my eyes on Christ. Eugene Peterson says, spiritual maturity is a life lived paying less and less attention to our own righteousness and more attention to God's righteousness. If there is such a thing as discipleship, that's what it is. And Christmas sets this in motion. Christmas is God's announcement that a new pattern is being established. And so Isaiah is describing this child that will be born and this son that is given to the weary and the heavy laden. And he describes this child as a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, and a Prince of Peace. The phrase Wonderful Counselor literally means the Wonder Counselor. I love that. It literally means the Wonder Counselor. It doesn't simply mean that he offers wonderful counsel that's better than any counselor you might go see might be able to offer you. It means that, as we'll see in a minute, but it means so much more than that. The phrase wonderful counselor literally means the wonder counselor. In other words, he counsels wonder. To put it crassly, he counsels magic. God-saturated, gospel-fueled magic. Not that don't send me letters and say, magic, devil, okay, I get it. I'm redeeming magic. That's Sam Lamerson, okay? Our resident magician. This is what he counsels, something that's counterintuitive. Something that doesn't come natural to us. Something that we won't believe unless we see. He counsels wonder. Listen to the wonder counsel that he gives us. Flip with me to Matthew chapter 11. Just want to run through a few passages where we hear this wonder counsel come our way from God. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. This is God speaking to you right now, to me right now. Okay, don't treat the Bible like it's some archaic book that isn't intended for us here and now. This is God who is alive and well, speaking to you and me right now, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of what you're facing. This is God's wonder counsel to you and to me right now. Matthew 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." You hear Tullian's voice, okay? But that is God speaking to you. It's not me. That's not my counsel to you. That's God's wonder counsel to you. Look at John 3:16. We talk about John 3:16. We sort of roll our eyes at John. I've heard it. I see it with the guy in the rainbow hair behind the goalpost. I've seen it for years, football games, blah, blah, blah. Okay, listen, this is God's wonder counsel to you and to me this morning. John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life." When it's all said and done, that's what matters. This life goes by in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye. And those of you who are older, ask yourself, as I'm beginning to ask myself now, a kid in college, I'm like, well, I feel like I'm 18 years old. I'm 41, I know. Some of you, that's young, I get it. But when you were 41, you didn't feel young, all right? You might say, oh, yes, I did. No, you didn't. When you were 41, you thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting old. Okay, half my life is probably over. Probably more than half my life is over. By the way that I drive and other things, half of my life is probably over. So one day, all of the things that I'm facing today will come to an end. All of the things that keep me up at night today will come to an end. All of the frustrations that I have right now will come to an end. So what is God's wonder counsel to me? "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in me won't perish, but will have eternal life." Let it hit you. Let that wonder counsel hit you. And then John chapter 6, beginning in verse 33. John 6:33, "For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." And listen to Jesus' words. To you, to me. In verse 35, Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst." You won't get that kind of counsel anywhere else in this world. You can't counsel yourself this way. This is above the sun counsel. This is counsel that comes down. This is counsel that comes our way from God. And then, probably my favorite passage in all the Bible, and one that I go back to over and over and over again, Romans chapter 8. Beginning in verse 37. Well, I can't skip over verse 1. Verse 1 of chapter 8 in Romans. By the way, advertisement. This is not part of my sermon. This is just a parenthetical advertisement. Unless God moves in a mysterious way, which he is capable of doing, my plan is to preach through the book of Romans when I come back beginning in January. And I am scared to death. I promised myself and others that I wouldn't even attempt to preach through the book of Romans until I was at least 50. And here I am. I was reading literally about 3 weeks ago. I was really down for some reason. I can't remember what it was. Actually, I can, but I'm not going to tell you. I was really down for some reason, and I woke up and I grabbed my Bible and I read Romans 1 through 8 in one sitting. If you've never read the entire book of Romans in one sitting, I mean, it'll take you maybe an hour and a half if you read it carefully. Do it. Do it. And when I closed my Bible and prayed, I'd have never heard God speak audibly, okay? I'd probably be freaked out if I did. But it was as clear as day that I just felt this internal longing to preach through the book of Romans. I mean, Romans is the foundation of everything we believe. Everything we believe. It is a theological masterpiece on the gospel. And so I think I might change my mind, but I think we are going to make our way through the book of Romans, and we're going to take our time. And we're going to take our time. This isn't going to be like a 6-week series or an 8-week series. And I've already given it a name. I've already given the series a name. Guess what it is? Romans. That's it. That's a statement in and of itself. If it was good enough for God, it's good enough for me. All right? Romans. And I'm super excited about it, very excited about it. I'm reading like a madman right now. I'm scared to death. Pray for me, because I am not worthy to preach through such an incredible masterpiece. But Romans chapter 8, verse 1, okay, that advertisement is over. Tell all your friends, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that advertisement is over. Listen to this wonder counsel we get from God to us in Romans chapter 8, verse 1. A verse, by the way, that the now deceased Presbyterian pastor James Montgomery Boyce, who was pastor of the historic 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, once said is the thesis of the entire Bible. Romans 8, verse 1. He said it's not just the thesis of Romans 8, it's not just the thesis of Romans, it's the thesis of the whole Bible. Listen to this wonder counsel. There is, therefore, now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. I remember a psychologist once telling me I could dismiss, a non-Christian psychologist telling me I could dismiss half of my patients tomorrow if I could just assure them that they're forgiven. You don't think this is wonder counsel? That God in Christ is not counting your sins against you because he counted your sins against Jesus. Therefore, it is Christ's work for sinners like you and me that spells the end of guilt and shame. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And then he closes. That's the way he begins Romans 8. And then listen to how he closes. Talk about wonder counsel. In all these things, verse 37, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth. I mean, he's thinking of everything he can think of. Nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing. It's amazing. You won't get that kind of counsel anywhere else in our conditional world either. God's love is one way, it's unconditional. Nothing can separate you from it. Nothing. So when you feel empty because you're not getting love from your parents or your spouse, when you're feeling empty and lonely because you're not getting love from the world, from the workplace, from society, know this, that there is nothing, absolutely nothing that can separate you from God's love. And that, when it's all said and done, is the only love you and I really need. It's wonderful to enjoy the love we get from other people, but the only love that you and I really need is the love that comes our way minus our merit. You just simply cannot wiggle away from a love that will not let you go, no matter what you do. This is God's wonder counsel to us. And then look at Philippians chapter 4. Dwayne preached on this a few weeks ago. Philippians chapter 4, beginning in verse 6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. What is the answer to our anxiety? It's the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. Well, where does this peace come from? It comes from God. It doesn't come from your successes. It doesn't come from cleaning up your act. It doesn't come from your achievements. It doesn't come from who other people think you are. It doesn't come from how much you can convince yourself that you're better than you are. Where does the peace come from? Where does peace and anxiety meet? It comes from God to us. It's a guarding peace. It's a peace that guards our hearts. It's a peace that we need, and it's a peace that God gives. And then Hebrews chapter 13, last one. Hebrews chapter 13. Beginning in verse 5. Here's one that creates a lot of anxiety in our lives. Keep your life free from the love of money. You know, the best way to do that is give it to your church. Okay? It's not my money. It's not yours either. We are owners of nothing and stewards of everything. So give it away. Give it away. The city needs to hear the gospel. And I am ecstatic about the fact that this Coral Ridge is increasingly becoming known as ground zero for the proclamation of the gospel in South Florida. And so we need to keep it going. Not my church, not the elder church, our church need to keep it going. But it requires our giving. And this is, according to the Bible, really the one thing that keeps us free from the love of money. Give it away. Don't let it stay in your pocket. Give it away. As soon as you can't love something you don't have. Well, you can. You can love the dream of getting more. But you can't, you're not keeping it anyway. What does it profit a man to gain a fortune and lose his soul? You're not going to keep it anyway. It's all going. It's all going. So give it away. Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, listen to this. This is unbelievable counsel. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Never. Everybody leaves. Everybody in your life and my life leaves. At some point they leave. Either they leave because the relationship falls apart or they leave because of death. Everyone leaves. And you have already experienced what it feels like to be forsaken in a relationship. Even the relationships that are still together. You're still forsaken. You're left behind, probably on a daily basis in some way, shape, or form. You're forsaken emotionally. You're forsaken mentally. You're forsaken physically. You're forsaken. Everybody in this world. Do not depend on anybody in this world, regardless of how long you've known them or how much you think they love you or how much you love them. Don't depend on anyone in this world to be for you what only Jesus promises to be. Because Jesus is the only one who says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Ever. People come and people go. People come into your life and people leave your life. And as I mentioned a minute ago, sometimes that doesn't just happen physically, where this person who was physically around is no longer physically around. This happens emotionally. This happens mentally, psychologically. The person who was there for you when you first got married is now absent, even though he lives under the same roof. Okay, the friend who was there for you when you were going through something difficult is nowhere to be found. She's detached. She's too consumed with her own problems. Everybody leaves. Everybody forsakes. People come, people go. Jesus is the only one who will never leave you nor forsake you. And then notice what he says. So we, verse 6, can confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? I mean, that is unbelievable counsel. The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? I mean, this is precisely what enabled Paul, the Apostle Paul, to say crazy counterintuitive stuff like, to live is Christ, to die is gain, in the face of persecution. I mean, the Lord is my helper. He hears me. One of the things as I talk to people that makes life so hard is they feel anonymous and unknown. Anonymous and unknown. Even in the context of a marriage that's been together for 30 years. People come and say, he doesn't know me. She doesn't know me. And they don't even care to want to find out more about me. I mean, I feel anonymous in my own home. I feel anonymous in this world out there, this rat race of a world out there where everybody's working so hard to prove their worth and justify themselves, and I'm just not measuring up. I feel unknown. I feel anonymous. And Jesus' counsel to you and to me is, your fears are never anonymous to me. Never. I know every hair on your head. I fashioned you in the womb. I created every part of you. Every part of you I made. I know you better than you will ever know yourself. People come to know us and see us for who we are, and they leave. God stays. God will always stay. He is the only one who will never leave us nor forsake us. He is the one who knows us better than we know ourselves. The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to us? What separates Jesus from every other counselor is that Jesus not only offers wonderful counsel, He is God's wonderful counsel to broken people. Jesus is everything God wants to say to us in a person. Everything. Jesus counsels us with the gospel because Jesus is the gospel. Jesus is God's good news to this broken world filled with broken people. This is the one that Isaiah saw. This is the one that Isaiah saw on the horizon. The one who would come and cure his people. Martin Luther used to make fun of people who would go looking for God in the clouds and find no one there because the God they were trying to go up to had already come down. I remember my grandmother once saying, I forget who the Russian cosmonaut was who went to space. This was back in the, 60s or 70s. My grandmother was remarkably witty. On my grandmother on my mom's side. My grandmother on my dad's side was too. But she didn't speak English, so I didn't understand a word she said. But I'm assuming she was witty because she was old and she looked wise. But my grandmother on my mother's side, I understood perfectly. Spoke perfect English. And I remember when one of the Russian cosmonauts had gone up to space in the 60s or 70s and came back and very arrogantly and proudly said, I went to space and did not see God there. And my grandmother just sort of wisely quipped, well, he looked in the wrong place. If he had taken off his spacesuit and gotten out of the spacecraft, he would have seen God immediately. Well, with the same sentiment, Luther used to make fun of people who would go up looking for God in the clouds and find no one there because the God they were looking for had already come down and was lying in a manger. Not somewhere up beyond the clouds, above our pain. Hebrews tells us that we have a great high priest who is able to sympathize with everything we face and go through because he became one of us. He lived inside our flesh and inside our frailties. He became weak. The God that created all things by speaking it into existence became weak. He became a baby. Christmas, in a sense, is the celebration of Paul's words in Romans chapter 5, verse 20, where he says, where sin is great, grace is greater. This is what Isaiah is saying. We're going to look at this passage again next week and unpack it even further, but this is what he's saying. Where sin is great, grace is greater. While we were yet sinners, Christ came to us. While we were running away, Christ ran toward us. While we were boasting in our disobedience, Christ became obedient to death, even death on a cross. This is the God who has come down. This is the wonderful counselor, wrapped in human flesh, lying in a manger, weak, incapable. It is this crying baby that wipes away our tears as our wonderful counselor. Think about that. It is this crying baby. Nothing impressive. Okay? Nothing impressive at all. Not riding in on a lightning bolt and shooting lightning bolts from his fists. That's the kind of hero we want to see. But a baby. This crying baby is the one who makes the promise that he will wipe away all of our tears as our wonderful counselor. Not just offering wonderful counsel, he is God's wonderful counsel. He is the counsel of wonder that comes from God to us, and he is the one that we celebrate when we take the Lord's Supper. When we take the Lord's Supper, he is the one that we celebrate. This is what the Lord's Supper is all about. This is what communion is all about. It is a celebration of God coming down because we could never make it up. The Christian life is not symbolized by a ladder, it is symbolized by a cross. First a crib, then a cross, both which signify God has come down to meet us in our mess with his mercy. He's come down, and that's what we celebrate by eating bread and drinking the cup. We are saying, this is Christ's body and blood that was shed for me, a heinous sinner who's come to do for train wrecks like me what I could never do for myself. He has come to counsel me with himself by giving his body, by giving his blood, because I could never counsel myself into rescue. I could never pull myself up by my bootstraps.